What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Welcome everybody to this World Satsang held on the 28th of April 2018 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show. And again, as always, I thank Kevin for his hard work in his own way of in helping to enlighten others and open their minds to a greater reality. And also thank him for putting this particular Satsanga, along with others, onto his YouTube channel, The Kevin Moore Show or The Moore Show. And you can find previous episodes of the World Satsanga on there as well as on my own website, which is www.beyondthesource.org. Okay, so what we got this particular month is a talk by myself on the genres of true energetic self, the higher self, the Oversoul, or the Godhead, and I'll go into that in more detail when I get to it. And then we've got a bunch of questions that are carry over from the last Satsanga with the Ascended Masters. But also have a number of new topics as well. And then we've got an end of meat meditation to energize the body and make you more vibrant and less tired, so to speak. Well, the true energetic self, excuse me, is in essence that which we really are. It's an individualization from source, hence the name that the Hindus use, the Godhead. Now, if you look at various different diagrams on the internet, you'll see that the Godhead is supposed to be Source itself. But from our perspective, our Godhead is an individualized unit of sentience given a body of energy that contains everything that we've experienced within the multiversal environment that the Source has created for us to experience, learn and evolve with on its behalf. And there's a number of different genres of true energetic self that was created as a function of a rather, using the words of the source entity, a rather not so much random or incomplete, but more a not even inefficient, a way that was not perfect, but was perfection in its own right. So he had an imperfect but perfect way of creating smaller versions of itself. Now, if you read the History of God Beyond the Source, books 1 and 2, you'll get the information that illustrates how this level of imperfection was created in terms of creating these individualized units of self. But in effect, these individualized units resulted in various different levels of sentience associated with the energy that was identified as being the body of energy that particular sentience would be attached to or associated with. Now, with within our own source entity, there are a number of different true energetic selves, and there's about 5. Well, there's not about it. There is 5 different true energetic selves that were created by our source entity, that were based upon its pure energy, its pure sentience. And the first one is the one that's associated with the human level. Those entities that are allowed to incarnate into a vehicle, an incarnate vehicle, experience low frequencies and express individualized free will. Then there's another level, a lower level of sentience that I've been told to classify as those entities that are being allowed to incarnate as backfill people. Those entities who are being allowed to maintain the balance of incarnate entities on the earth, whilst others are ascending to a higher frequency, so that the population is maintained, and there is no thoughts of why is the population disappearing, for instance, from those who stay at various different levels. Then there's the animal true energetic self, which is again a lower level of sentience that is here, and we interact with on a regular basis, and they haven't got individualized free will, but again they occupy a number of different animal body types, incarnate body types. Then there's a true energetic self with a level of sentience that can only work within the plant regime, the flora regime within the planetary system, or the low frequencies of the Earth and other planets of this low frequency. And then there's those who occupy those of the mineral or the rock type of body that's available. And that doesn't specifically mean that it's just associated with inanimate objects. There are mineral vehicles that can move around, and we don't see those particularly on the Earth, although some mountain ranges do move around, but they're part of the Earth anyway. But there are true energetic selves that work with the minerals. Now, disassociated from this, but mildly associated, is the There are 5 different versions of the There's a version of the which are completely uninvolved with any form of creation or evolution, which are, for want of a better word, doing their own thing within the space that is the origin. There's only a handful of those particular Then there's the pure which are of 3 different types. They are, in essence, again, uncreated creations as a function of the origin reusing its own energy and its own sentience to create the source entities. And that particular level of sentience that was used to create the source entities, that was previously used to create its own duplications of itself, the 12 different origins didn't mix. It's a bit like oil and water. So they out popped the that were basically origin sentience, but in a smaller body of energies. And let's say there's a number of different pure versions of those. There's non-captive which are that can move in between the different source entities, and there's captive those that are, if you like, stuck in the energetic barrier that is a source entity, but they're still classified as being And then there's a hybrid which is in effect an energy or sentience that is a mixture of low percentages of sentience or original origin sentience and source entity sentience, and it tends to be around the 4, 5, 6, 13, 14% of sentience or origin sentience versus source entity sentience, which is the higher percentage. But I won't talk about those right now because that's a whole different lecture in its own right. So there's 5 different true energetic selves, and the true energetic self is what Dolores Cannon called the Oversoul, what we generally call the higher self, what the Hindus call the Godhead, and what I'm told to call the true energetic self. Although if you look at it from a completely different angle, actually energy is not what we are. It's the sentience that is what we are. Our true energetic self is basically sentience that is individualized but associated with or attached to or commandeers a group of energies to work with. I say a body of energies because the body means a group of energies. So the true energetic self is sentience with energy that allows it to interact with the locations within the frequencies of the multiverse, and therefore the universes within the multiverse that we are created to work within. And clearly that true energetic self individualizes smaller aspects of its own sentience and energy to create what we sometimes call a soul, to be projected into a vehicle of some sort of any different frequency within the physical universe, to experience that environment associated with a particular frequency within the physical universe, a planetary environment, nebula-based environment, galactic environment, to experience, learn and evolve in terms of interacting with that environment and interacting with other entities or beings within that environment. Okay, and so the true energetic self can split itself down into a maximum of 12 smaller aspects of its own sentience, and those aspects can also project themselves down into 12 smaller versions of sentience as well, which are called shards. And there's a lecture on this, and they're associated with it, that's become part of the World Satsang, and is also on my website in the events and lectures section. There's a whole sort of PowerPoint slide there, PDF, that you can download to look at the PowerPoint slides associated with that particular lecture of who we are and how we incarnate. So really there's these different genres, although they appear to be associated with human levels, subhuman level, if you want to call it that, animal levels, plant levels and mineral levels, they are all a function of the quality of, or the amount of, you can call it density of, sentience associated with that particular body of energy. The body of energy would stay the same. So if you had to weigh energy, if you said that a kilogram of energy is the constant, but it's the amount of sentience associated with that kilogram of energy, and you said, well, okay, for a human level true energetic self, you have a kilogram of energy and a kilogram of sentience, and then you go down to the next level, you might see it being like 80% or 800 grams of sentience, and you go down to the backfill, the animal level, and it's like 500 grams of sentience, and then 300 and 200 grams of sentience. So there's a percentage of sentience associated with a common factor, which is the energy that designates the genre or the ability to interact and be creative within an environment, and experience, learn, and evolve within that environment. So level of sentience is the metric that designates the genre, and I'm sometimes told to call it the quality of sentience. The more sentience you've got for that kilogram of energy, for instance, the higher the quality. The less sentience you've got associated with that kilogram of energy, the less the quality. Okay. Now it's also worth noting that this sentience isn't specifically attached to or needs to be attached to a body of energy. Sentience, when it becomes self-aware, which we all are from our perspective, when we're back in the energetic and we disincarnate, doesn't necessarily need to associate itself with a body of energy. Most true energetic selves have a body of energy that's been assigned to it by its source entity. But from our perspective, we can, should we decide to do so, move that sentience from the body of energy that's been assigned to us, or that we've commandeered, for want of a better word, to another body of energy that could be assigned to us by source, or that we could commandeer again ourselves. So, if you like, the sentience is like the driver of a car, and the body of energy is the car. So we can move around different cars, and so we can move around different bodies of energy. And in a similar way, the projected aspect from a true energetic self moves around in different incarnate vehicles. And so the sentience can experience different things in different vehicles as well. And that's why we incarnate. We're able to sort of experience as a smaller unit of our individualized self, an aspect, smaller aspect, what we sometimes call a soul. On behalf of that true energetic self, we can experience various different aspects of the finite detail of various parts of the multiversal environment. Okay, so the different genres are based upon the quality of sentience or the amount of sentience given to a standard group or body of energies, either assigned to or commandeered by ourselves, assigned to by source or commandeered by ourselves. The level of incarnation we can achieve is governed by that quality of sentience, or that amount of sentience. The type of vehicle that an aspect can be projected into is relevant to that quality of sentience. So in effect, we see a lot of information out there which suggests that we can incarnate into different levels, or we have, if we have bad karma, we'd incarnate as an animal in the next incarnation. But that actually is not correct. We can, and I'll touch on that very, very quickly. A human level aspect or true energetic self can incarnate into any of the other levels, the backfill people level, the animal level, the plant level, the mineral level, but it doesn't create a benefit. It doesn't, going into a lower vehicle or a lower environment or a lower body of incarnate vehicle that allows a limited level of interaction with the environment doesn't benefit us at our particular quality or genre of true energetic self. So although we could incarnate in lower vehicles, we don't. It's just not of benefit to us. And I very much feel that a lot of stories of, if you don't behave yourself, or you don't look after your karma in this particular incarnation, you'll incarnate as an ant or as a goat, is simply a way of controlling people, a way of threatening people, a way of putting fear into people to make sure that they think, behave and act in a good way. Moving down those particular true energetic selves, though, the backfill people level of quality of sentience associated with that particular genre of true energetic self can also go down to the animal and the plant and the mineral, but they can't go up to the human level unless there's an evolutionary jump. The animal level of true energetic self can incarnate in the plant and the mineral, but not into the backfill people level and the human level. So you can see that you can incarnate into vehicles below your level of quality of sentience, but you can't go above your level of quality of sentience unless there's an evolutionary jump. Now, we do know that there are animal levels of sentience that move eventually. That's the true energetic self, by the way, or sometimes we call it a soul group as well, because the true energetic self, when it projects a number of different aspects in different vehicles, has a group of aspects is projected. And if you want to call it a soul, you can do. If you want to call it a group of souls, you can do, but the group of souls are associated with a single true energetic self or Godhead. But you can call it a soul group as well. They have been noted of being jumping the evolutionary level from the animal up to the human level. This only works over a long period, and that long period is associated with constant interaction with sentience, incarnate sentience of the human level, not the backfill level. If they associated themselves with the backfill level, then they could jump up to the backfill level. So there are ways of leapfrogging, but it takes a long time to do it. But it's very, very rare, extremely rare. And generally speaking, a true energetic self that's due to do an evolutionary jump would go to the backfill level. And then the backfill level would make an evolutionary jump to the human level. Okay, so plants would for instance, go to the animal level. Very rare. In fact, it is impossible for a mineral to go to an animal and a plant to go to a backfill level because of the quality of sentience. The animal level is the lowest level of sentience that can jump, leapfrog. Okay, That's what I'm just being told. It's to do with the amount of the quality of sentience associated with it. The backfill can move up to the human level. The animal can move up to the backfill level and can go to the human level, but only because of constant loving interaction with individuals at the human level. Okay, so these are the genres. There's 5 genres of Om. I think I'll talk about the Om in another lecture, probably next time actually. In fact, there's going to be a whole book on the Om later, maybe 2 books down the road. So that's going to be interesting for people, I hope. And there's 5 levels of true energetic self associated with our source entity. So in real terms, we need to think about these 5: the human level, backfill level, animal level, plant level, mineral level, with a potential 6th being the hybrid level, because the source, or our source entity, does create true energetic cells that are a mixture of origin sentience, this small percentage, and its own sentience as well. But don't forget, this is all a step down function. In essence, we're all origin sentience. It's just that the individualization of origin sentience to source entity sentience gives it personality, gives it a signature, if you want, based upon the experience it is also created. And so that experience gets stamped upon the subsequent levels of individualization further on down the chain, so to speak. Okay, so those are the genres of true energetic self and what they would be associated with. It's quite well known that there are human levels, animal levels, plant levels, and mineral levels. The backfill level isn't generally known. The associated level of sentience with the human level, in summary, is 1-to-1. The backfill level is about 80%. The animal level is 50%. The plant level is 30%, and the mineral level is 20% of sentience associated with the body of energy that it's been assigned to by source. Okay, thank you for listening to that. It's about on time, actually, about 20 minutes, which is fantastic. I'm now going to go through the different questions that have been given to me, predominantly by that lovely lady at the moment who's looking after me, the transcription of the World Satsanga, and has got a lot of questions. Now, lots of these questions don't just come from this lady, they come from people who look at her own website. She has a way of broadcasting information in different ways that she's gained herself and has been gained by others, and it helps to sort of disseminate this ability to expand our thoughts. And some of the questions that come through from this lady are from the people who look specifically at her website, which is fantastic, because it means that things are being disseminated in various different ways. It doesn't have to be through me or my website or Kevin Moore. It can be through anybody, provided they feel that information is right for them. Okay. Different individuals have different learning styles, have different levels of capability and different levels of expansion and different levels of understanding the greater reality. If it feels right for you, then use it. Broadcast it if you wish. If it doesn't feel right for you, then you wouldn't be listening to this satsanga. Fair enough. Okay, so here we go. This is the first question. And it goes on to say, here are a few questions to consider for our April satsanga. The first one is, what is the fate of all lesser sentient true energetic selves, now incarnate as backfill people, animals, plants and mineral entities, etc., in our 4th evolutionary cycle, when we don't have a physical universe as part of the 4th multiverse anymore? We're currently in the 3rd evolutionary cycle for those who are in catch-up mode. The first 2 we've accelerated our ability to move through an evolutionary cycle very quickly, actually. I can't tell you what it means in terms of years, of how long we've been in this particular evolutionary cycle, but I'm being told that we're moving at a speed which is at least 3 times the speed of the last evolutionary cycle, which is at least 3 times the speed of the first evolutionary cycle. So we're starting to move through an evolutionary cycle in a sort of logarithmic or exponential way, where we'll start to move faster and faster and faster. So an evolutionary cycle may take countless billions and trillions and quadrupillions of years, if you want to call it that, to where an evolutionary cycle can be a blink of an eye. And so we are moving through quite quickly. And really the true energetic selves, from our perspective, when we move into, this is the human level, okay? When we move into the next evolutionary cycle, we'll still remain in that particular function. So unless there are true energetic selves who are able to move up an evolutionary level, for instance, backfill people to human level, or animals to backfill people, or animals to human level, they will continue on their particular rise upwards. Now, you may have thought that, why wouldn't an animal go to a backfill person level? Why wouldn't a plant go to an animal level as a function of going through an evolutionary cycle? Well, it's not specifically logical to do that, if you think about it, because the whole point of an evolutionary cycle is for the source to disassociate its sentience from the body of energy that it's currently occupying within the origin, and the environments and the frequencies and the structures associated with that particular volume of origin space, with its own area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness, to another area and do it again. And so basically what's going on is that we are experiencing or trying to experience similar things but in different locations. So think of it in terms of, from a human perspective, think of it in terms of, we experience how to grow crops in the Arctic, and then we experience how to grow crops in the tropical, and then we experience how to grow crops in a desert, and then we experience how to grow crops in a fertile land, and then we experience how to grow crops in a semi-fertile land. It's just doing the similar things, but in enduring and working with different environments. So there may well be a different example of a physical universe in the next evolutionary cycle. And I'm just going to ask the source if that's part of the plan. And it's basically told me that depending upon how we work, there may be another 2 evolutionary cycles, or a maximum of 12 evolutionary cycles, where we will have a physical universe. And it's saying that's because it depends upon how it and the other source entities work with that particular area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness that the origin is allowing the source entities to work with. And so, depending upon how well we work with it, we'll either not work with those particular frequencies and work with higher frequencies. So we may work with, rather than working with frequencies later, we'll work with simply the subdimensional components, and then dimensions in the zones, for example. And then maybe later in other evolutionary cycles, we might not even work with subdimensional components. It might just be full dimensions and zones and continuum, for instance. And there's a whole group of different levels of structure that are within the origin that we've got to experience, learn and evolve through. If you go to the book The Origin Speaks, all of the different structural components for this particular level of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness of the origin is explained and laid out to explain what each of them is and what each of them does. Okay. So to continue this particular question, though, there's 3 more parts to it. It says, as you told us, Source tried to fix them by increasing the volume of their sentience in their true energetic selves before populating the third multiverse, but it didn't work because the energies migrated back to their old and familiar true energetic selves. Okay, that's right. So this sort of justifies what I've just basically said. Things will stay as they are unless we do move upwards in a quite radical way. What will happen to their true energetic selves in the 4th cycle? They will remain as they are. They will move through another evolutionary cycle, and the level of sentience I'm being told, can grow as a function of evolution. So there is I'm just being shown an image here that what can happen is, as a lower genre of true energetic self starts to evolve in a more dramatic way, it attracts energy to it that allows it to grow its sentience. The more energy you've got, the more sentience you can accrue. And that sort of goes against a little bit this sort of basic 1 kilogram, for instance, of energy that's used as a standard body of energy. But I'm being shown this is a temporary condition where it allows the accrual of extra sentience to increase the quality of sentience. But eventually, when that quality of sentience is properly absorbed or integrated with the first quality of sentience, it becomes this higher quality of sentience, then the energies that we use to gather that sentience aren't required anymore, and they can break away. And the sentience itself can also break away to another body of energies that's equal to the mass or the weight, if you want to call it that, of the first body of energies. And so the quality of sentience increases, whilst the body of energies that are required to house that sentience remain as per the standard. That's what I'm being shown here. So the standard energies can increase to attract levels of sentience as a result of how energy can evolve in its own right. That's the difference between an entity and a being. An entity is a body of sentient energy that is individualized from source. A being is one where sentience is a function of the eventual evolutionary path of energies of similar or same type that group together to create rudimentary intelligence, and then get bigger and bigger and bigger until they eventually also become self-aware, have consciousness, are creative, and therefore create sentience. Okay, so it's a function of that. And the last part of this question is the reason I ask is because there are some of the most precious and beloved forms in our physical universe. Yes, but that's from a human perspective. When we are in the energetic, we don't see the physical universe as somewhere where we want to be, really. It's somewhere where we have to be to evolve, to accelerate our evolution. And so our true energetic selves, really, although they can work with the physical universe, tend to obviously reside where their evolution level is and their frequential level within the function of the multiverse. And so really the physical universe, other than it being an evolutionary accelerant, isn't really of much interest to us. Okay. Next question is a couple of questions about the omniverse. This refers to the Origins comment in the Origin Speaks. Nothing is new, it's just different entities experiencing the old in a different way, which is exactly what I desire. Differentiated experience and understanding. So, what is my definition of an omniverse, and what area does it encompass? Well, an omniverse is everything that is the origin, basically. It's limitless. I mean, right now it has a supposed boundary line, that boundary line being what the origin itself understands about itself. So the omniverse has a, if you want to think of it this way, I've just been joined by my lovely little cat Pixie, who's obviously feeling that he wants to be part of the energies, and he's coming mooching around, wanting his ears tweaked. Or is it just food he wants? I don't know. It's lunchtime. In this particular function of this event space. So the omniverse is just everything there is, everything that is the origin. And if you like, there's sort of mapped parts of the omniverse and there's unmapped parts of the omniverse. And so it's everything. It's there is no limitations on the omniverse. It is totally infinite in every sense of the word. Okay, So there's another part to this question which sort of starts to expand a bit more. He says, does it refer to the origin's current area of self-awareness, which is becoming polyomniscient? And is it being mapped by the source entities, each contributing its own omniscience to it? That's how I understand it. No, right. The omniverse is everything that is, the origin. The area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness is a part of the omniverse which is being mapped out, or has been mapped out. And our source entities and us are helping to map it out. Okay, so part of it is right, part of it is correct, and part of it is a little bit limiting there. So the next part of it is, as the omniverse is being mapped, do different source entities overlap each other's already mapped areas as they move around its energies from one evolutionary cycle to the next, or is the area so big that each part is being mapped just once by one source entity? Now, that's a very good question, and I'll need to ask that question, and I do need to ask about that. Right, what I'm being told is that in general, every source entity has to experience every part of the current area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness of the origin itself. So each area is experienced 12 times in effect, or 11 times if you think about source entity 12 going out and doing its own stuff. There are occasions, though, where there are parts of I'm being told there are occasions, or there will be occasions, where there are parts of the origin where just one source entity or a couple of source entities experiencing that part is enough, simply because of what's there. It's almost like the way to explain it is this: if it's like barren ground, then you only need one individual to say the ground's barren. You don't need all of us to say the ground is barren. It's enough for one source to say this area functions in this way. There is no benefit from anybody else dealing with it, and that's the only time when the other source entities or most of the source entities don't need to experience that particular area of the origin's polyomniscient sentient self-awareness. And that's so in general they all need to experience it, but there are times, there are little pockets of areas where one will do, or two or three will do. Okay, that was an interesting response there. Okay, just one moment. Just have to deal with my little pussycat who's obviously decided it's food time. So my little pussycat decided it was cupboard love, really, rather than want to be part of the energies, because as soon as I've put a bowl of food down, the nose was in the trough, and quite rightly so. Okay, next question. In Beyond the Source Book 1, you were chatting to Source Entity 2 about the use of high frequency light as a language. And Source Entity 2 said that the use of light to communicate is inefficient because the speed of light is variable and not constant like we think. That's a human thought. Light is based upon photonic particles with weight and a resonant frequency. As a result, light is easily affected or distorted by the frequential changes in its environment, which include gravity and magnetic fields. But some channels, including the wonderful Wendy Kennedy that Kevin Moore interviewed, give so-called language of light activations that contain sound, light, sacred geometry and information that speaks to you on a soul level and bypasses the language centers in the mind. So you don't have to think about it, you just listen to it and feel it. She said it represents a universal language that all beings understand. Different galactic civilizations, e.g. Arcturians, Lyrians, Andromedans, Cassiopeians, etc., all have their own dialect of the light, language of light, but we understand them all. when I asked you about this before, you said it's nonsense. I still say it's nonsense, but when we listen to these light activations, we can definitely feel energetic shifts and clearing in our body and energy field. Why is that? Right. Anything that is physical is slow, full stop. Anything that is sentience based is at the optimal speed, full stop. What we are feeling for these activations, we're giving ourselves permission basically to open up to a higher frequency, and that's it. It's simply a key. It's like being attuned to be a Reiki healer is a key. It's something we as human beings like to have to give ourselves permission to say we can do this now. You know, it's a bit like passing an exam and being told that you've now been able to drive a car. I mean, you don't need to pass an exam to drive a car, but it gives you permission to drive the car. I mean, you might have been able to drive a car for a long time with somebody else teaching you, or you're teaching yourself, but it's not specifically anything else other than ability. Sometimes as human beings we like to have authority to use that ability. So there's two things about this thing about light language, and I want to try and make clear this up. One is it's a piece of new age mumbo jumbo, where people say, "Oh, I'm speaking on a higher level, so it must be a light language, or a higher frequency must be a light language." Telepathy is a higher language. It doesn't use light. It is specifically a means of communicating from one sentient individual to another sentient individual, and that transcends incarnated vehicle type. So a lot of these descriptions are really earthbound descriptions. They're low frequency understandings. Light is a physical medium. If somebody said to me, we communicate on a telepathic or an empathic or any other function of sentient communication, and that makes and that activates centers of the brain, I'd say fair enough, it does do, because it would activate the third eye, for instance. And there's various different parts that we use, the pineal and the pituitary gland as well. It's also useful to help us to communicate and experience, learn, and evolve. But all of these things, quote, different galactic civilizations, Arcturians, Lyrans, Andromedans, Cassiopeians, are physical beings. They are third frequency beings. Maybe some of them are close to the fourth frequency, and so they are thinking of and working with a lower level of communication that's based upon the use of the physical vehicle. But this, again, if you listen to a light activation, it's sort of a key, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'm going to be activated. So all of a sudden, you would listen to a tape, or you listen to a CD or an MP3 file or whatever of somebody doing an activation, and irrespective of whether they've given you the activation or not, you can do it, but you need to give yourself authority to do it. So you're using the activation process as an authoritative medium, a key to turn it on. So that's what it is. That's what's really going on there. So the use of light is slow. On a physical perspective, on a sort of a scientific and technological perspective, we think that fibre optics is fast for doing things like broadband and other telecommunications, but it's only as fast as a processor on either end of the fibre optic. And so although things can travel at the speed of light, actually electricity travels at the speed of light within a copper wire. It's just that the speed of the processor either end is the limiting factor, or the factor which makes one thing being faster than the other in terms of, you know, encoding or decoding the information that's being transmitted. Okay, so simply put, it's a very human understanding, and it's being used as a key to unlock our abilities. Oh, I've done a sort of a light language activation. I can now communicate on that level. well, you've always been able to do that. It's just that you've denied yourself the opportunity because you've limited yourself based upon your human condition. That's it. If you want to use those things as those very mechanical means as a way of allowing yourself to be unlocked, fine. Simply just tell yourself you can do it, and know you can do it. Feel you can do it. Visualize yourself you can do it. Create a level of abundance surrounding that ability to do it, and you will do it. It's simply removing the doubt, removing the limiting thought processes. Okay, next bit is about guides. It said, I'd like to know more about our guides. On the astral level, such as relatives that have passed on, for instance, who try to help their loved ones that are still in the physical. Some of them seem to group together, for instance, grandmothers, uncles, fathers, etc., on the other side to guide the incarnate loved ones they left behind. Right, okay. Now, very quickly, I'm going to say that sometimes our guides and helpers take the form of those individuals who we were interacting with in a family scenario or a loved one scenario or a friendship scenario, because it's something we can relate to in our limited understanding and limited level of expansiveness. So although it may look like a grandmother or a grandfather or an uncle or a brother or a deceased partner is helping us, it's more than likely to be one of our helpers who's manifesting a form in our minds to create a link or a bridge between them and us to help us move forwards, for instance. There are times when those individuals do actually help us, but normally that's quite rare. They've got their own things to do and they move on. The only time that they may interact with us post the demise of the physical body is if they want to let us know that they're okay. When my late wife Anne ascended and died, she created a signal for me to let me know that she was okay, and that was basically a little electronic gadget that was used to undo beer bottles, can you believe? And when this little electronic gadget was in contact with the metal of the beer top, the beer bottle top, it would go off and play a Christmas tune, and that gadget had been hidden away for a long time. I'd even forgotten where it was, and where it was in a place where there was no other metal contact. And when I meditated on Anne 7 hours after her human form had demised, and said, okay, where was this message you're going to give me? This thing sounded off a couple of times, about 3 or 4 times during the day it went off as well. So, and you couldn't make it work without metal to metal contact. So sometimes they do help out, just to let us know they're okay. Very rarely they stick around though, very, very rarely they stick around, because the guide and helpers help us. So it's usually the guide and helpers that are using their forms, and sometimes their energetic signatures to make their level of communication with us more robust. So really, if I look at these other questions out, that might negate them. So let's have a look at the questions. Are these relatives still existing on the astral plane, frequency bands 4 to 7, meaning that their soul's still in transit because they're choosing to do an astral detour to help and guide their loved ones from the other side for several years after death? Those that stay on those levels tend to be those individuals who do want to stay for a little bit, yes. As I've just explained, it's generally not the case, they move on. But it can also be those who get stuck. And getting stuck on these levels is only a temporary thing anyway, because the guide and helpers usually move them on quite as quick as they can do. But some individuals do reject the fact that their human form has demised, and so they try to maintain a link with the earth, and that means that they do stick around these astral levels, frequency bands 4 to 7. Frequency band 4 is the lower astral, frequency band 5 is the upper lower astral, frequency band 6 is the lower upper astral, and frequency band 7 is the upper astral. So they do sometimes stick around, but it's usually not for long, usually to give a message, and if they are, if you like, so immersed in their incarnation that they still believe they're alive and their body's died. Okay. Next one is, or are their souls already doing their life review at that level of the true energetic self in the multiverse? And then from that level they're able to project small aspects of themselves with a familiar personality to the astral plane to help an incarnate loved one as needed. That's a possibility as well. That does sometimes happen. In effect, it's more likely that they've moved on. They're in a condition where they're individualized still and communing with the bigger part of themselves, the true energetic self, and they are experiencing communion and as well as reviewing what's been experienced. If it's beneficial to the individual who still incarnates to experience some connectivity, then that may well happen. If it's beneficial, then it helps them to move on and to work with their own life plan. The next part is it a soul that is kept projected outside of the true energetic self in the back-to-back lives? That can happen as well. That's a possibility. It's worthwhile noting that the true energetic self can allow the communication, transient or other, of that aspect that was projected into a physical form at any point. It can be in any of the different types of communion, or if it's kept outside of the energies of the true energetic self for when that particular aspect is being used in back-to-back lives as well. So even if it's in full communion, if it's felt that it's necessary, or there's a request or requirement from the other incarnate aspect via its own true energetic self to give it a push in some way or give it some encouragement in some way, then there will be a level of minor interaction, and that can be from any of the different types of communion. So if you look on the website www.beyondthesource.org, go into events and lectures, you'll see the different PDF files, the different lectures there. Who we are and how we incarnate is the one to look for, and then there you'll see the different types of communion that we achieve when we've come back from our particular incarnation. And any of those different types of communion are used by us depending upon how we integrate with our true energetic self. And from any of those different types of communion, there can be a transient projection or a transient level of contact between an aspect that's returned to the energetic and an aspect that it was working with that is still incarnate. And another comment here is it a new incarnation only at a higher frequency level to act as a guide before the true energetic self gradually pulls itself out of the physical universe altogether? Not generally, no. True energetic selves in general are still working with the physical universe. There's not many, although I've seen quite a few recently. There's not, in general though, from our worldwide or physical universe-wide perspective, there's not many individuals who are in a position of, or their true energetic self is in a position of deciding not to incarnate in the physical universe yet. Okay, so that's that. I hope that's that question. Next part is, the reason why I'm asking this is that some of the dead relatives seem to have a snarky personality shortly after death. They also seem to mature or evolve or become wiser and more expansive the more time they spend on the other side. Well, the answer to that is they do become more mature and evolve because they become more absorbed in or have some level of increased communion with the true energetic self. So they start to become, and even before they go into communion, they start to gain access again to everything that they've achieved or experienced in previous incarnations and the incarnations of other aspects of that true energetic self. So they definitely become more evolved or wiser because they no longer have the limitations of that which is being created as a function of their human incarnation. So from that perspective, when you see a soul go from being maybe a low intelligence type individual, and then if some medium communicates with them, and then they become very wise and benevolent, then you know that the personality that was a function of ego, that's created by incarnation, has been wiped away and replaced by the vast level of experience and evolution that a soul normally has. And that's why they become wiser when they're on the other side, because they're more in communication. They're more in communication with what they are. They're more interactive with their true energetic self, and they're more interactive with the environment that's around them. Okay, a bit more here. It says, when you say the ego dissolves when the body dies, it seems that some of the human personality or quirks are still with them on the other side shortly after death. Is that coming from the remnants of the ego's lower personality? No. The ego is created as a function of the near total isolation of the incarnate aspect from the true energetic self, and so that sentient energy that's projected into the human vehicle or other vehicle starts to gain a personality, starts to believe it's the vehicle, and the personality is created as a function of incarnation, interaction with parents, colleagues, friends, loved ones, and the environment. And it does dissolve as a function of the demise of the human form. But if you like, the content of what it is also absorbed, and so that, because it's part of the experience, that which was created is part of what the overall experience is. So even though the ego is created and dissolved, what's dissolved is the ego's ability to command and control the sentience. That which was created as a function of isolation, or near total isolation, is absorbed and is used as an experiential medium. It's just that it doesn't become the dominating factor of who and what that incarnate aspect is. However, it is used as a bridge between those who are disincarnate and those that are incarnate, because otherwise, how do you recognise that soul? If somebody wants to communicate with a deceased relative or deceased partner, they would not recognise who that partner was if it came through a trance medium, unless the personality that they recognise as being that person is used as a communication medium. So that's what so they use it sometimes as a means of communication, a means of recognition, and that's really what it is there for, really. And more to this is, when does that lower personality get completely dissociated from the soul? Is it only after the soul partially or fully reintegrates with its true energetic self? The moment we move our aspect out of the incarnate state and it becomes energetic, the personality of the ego loses its grip on the command and control of the aspect of sentience that was used in the incarnation. It gets absorbed as part of experience, but it's not what is the aspect. It's not what is the true energetic self. It's just a smaller function of it. It's a smaller temporary personality that's been created. So it becomes absorbed almost straight away. And the feeling that the aspect gets is that the personality that's part of itself becomes like a small drop in the ocean, and the bigger personality takes over, and all the memories of experiences, learning and evolutionary associated with previous incarnations and other evolutionary cycles all comes back into the sentience of that which is temporarily individualized. And when we go into different levels of communion, the levels of sentience and experiences associated with that aspect start to then collate is a better word, or blend into all of the experiences of the other aspects associated with that true energetic self and the work that the true energetic self does in its own right. Okay, so basically everything is absorbed later, although that which is the total experience of the aspect comes to the forefront almost straight away. And the comment down here says, thanks for your insight as usual. It's a bit like the work you did with your late wife Anne after her demise. Some of her comments in the Andogs are pretty funny. Yes, Anne was a little bit frustrated with my questions at some points and some of the simplicity of the questions. But this is sometimes how it works. Okay. Next question is, after your lecture on the Ascended Masters associated with source entities, my readers would like to know more about the Ascended Masters, specifically those who incarnated in female bodies. This is important to know given that our history books have generally left out things like that there are 12 female disciples of Jesus that worked with 12 male disciples to create 12 full disciples that worked together in pairs. Okay. Would you please take this opportunity to give us some examples of female Ascended Masters, particularly those associated with the 12 source entities and others? We know some of them had female counterparts like Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Saint Germain had Lady Master Portia, but there must be others for each of the source entities. There's not many actually. In summary, there are only 5 main female Ascended Masters. I mean, there's lots of Ascended Masters of various different qualities, I would say. But there are only 12 main Ascended Masters associated with a source entity. The others are individuals whose true energetic selves have moved beyond the need to incarnate, but they're a part of this particular source entity. So what we have is just basically 5 Ascended Masters that are, for want of a better word, female. Now, the first one is Lady Leto, and Lady Leto is associated with Diwal Kul, which is associated with Source Entity 9. She's also done some work with Saint Germain as well. I mean, don't forget they work with each other, and also, of course, Lady Portia. So they tend to work with each other in some way, shape or form, perpetuating the work of another, for instance, or their own work through different incarnations. This particular Ascended Master has incarnated as Teresa de Avila, who was a founder of an esoteric order of affinity with Britain, especially in Scotland apparently, and then also with Europe, and the fragrance of the heather often shows her presence, so we're told. So Lady Master Leto is associated as a twin flame. That means that she's the same aspect, or a portion of the sentience in the same aspect, as Diwal Kul from Source Entity 9. Lady Lotus was an individualized Ascended Master, not from any other source entity as far as I'm aware, other than our own, but has incarnated as a daughter of Saint Germain as well. So Saint Germain seems to be quite a common factor here. Has done quite a lot of work with the Earth at this particular level. So working with Saint Germain as a daughter of that particular entity is interesting. Apparently, Lady Lotus has also incarnated as other noted figures such as Joan of Arc and Queen Elizabeth, and also Benjamin Franklin. More recently, as Edna Ballard, who went through lots of issues associated with being persecuted for her work in bringing the message of her inner strength, and the work of Saint Germain as well. So that particular Ascended Master has been around quite recently as well. The other one is Lady Magda. Now, Lady Magda is one who is again a twin flame of Sananda. Now, Sananda is Jesus, and therefore associated with Source Entity 4. So, Lady Magda is also Lady Mary Magdalene, and also spends some time with Lady Virtue as well. So basically, Lady Magda was a twin flame of Jesus, and incarnated as Magdalene, and has done lots of the work as well associated with Sananda or Jesus. So that's the second one associated with a different source entity, is Lady Magda. Okay, but again, it's a twin flame of, or the same sentience as Jesus there. Next one is Lady Nada. Lady Nada also worked with Jesus, as it happened, specifically serving with Jesus, so to speak. I'm not seeing anything here in my own understanding that suggests that this particular ascended master is associated with any other source entities. Of what I'm being told is that there's potentially a twin flame is with the prophet Elijah. But that's something we need to sort of look at this here. Elijah, of course, was source entity 8. So it's, and again, so she's been associated with obviously John the Baptist in that instance, but it's not specifically clear here from my understanding. But if you want to think of it as being that she's part of or a twin flame as with Elijah, and is associated with source entity 8, then you can do. The last one, of course, is Lady Portia, who is associated with Saint Germain as a twin flame of Saint Germain, who's source entity 10. So if you think of it, really, we've basically got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 5 female ascended masters, of which it appears that 4 of those are twin flames, or can be classified as twin flames, or loosely classified as twin flames, and they're associated with, again, 4 of the different source entities. Okay, so I hope that answers that particular question. It's a good question, actually. It's something which is quite interesting as well. Now, another quick question about ascended masters is there's one of the readers has a hard time believing that Columbus was an ascended master, given his record of slaughtering people in the New World. How do I explain that? Do these ascended masters have dark lives or fully immersed lives as part of the human experience? Well, if you think of one of the ascended masters just talked about incarnating as Queen Elizabeth I, then you'll realise that they do have immersed lives. Sometimes they have to work in the way that's expected of the time, and some of these times are quite brutal. I mean, Queen Elizabeth I was quite brutal as a leader, and sometimes to make things change or make people work in a specific way, you have to work in a quite a forceful way. For instance, Sri Yukteswar was a hard teacher. Paramahansa Yogananda always stated that he was a much more benevolent teacher, but he was very hard on his first line students as well. So it just depends upon when they incarnate and what they're trying to do, and what they're trying to expand the progression of, or the population of, the incarnate human vehicle into the various different parts of the world, or create different environments, or expand technologies, or expand thought processes, or change the direction of the way we work. So they aren't always portrayed as being in a benevolent human vehicle or a benevolent role, for example. And also don't forget that sometimes they have to be hard to make us move direction. So there are ascended masters who have particularly dark incarnations, and also there are ascended masters who, in their level of immersion of their incarnation, decide not to be in communication with their true energetic self. So they have no idea of who and what they are, what they've achieved in previous incarnations, and their lineage, and their, for want of a better word, their the way they've been of service to humankind. So it's, you know, you have to think that they are also aspects of a true energetic self, and they also have to experience all the different functions of incarnate existence as well, not just being a very benevolent, very service orientated, individualized form of sentience that is projected into a human form or other form. Okay, an individualized aspect of a higher self, of a true energetic self that has been in service. Sometimes they have to experience the yin to the yang as well. Okay, so don't be shocked if you see many other ascended masters who are or have experienced an incarnation that is considered to be a little bit dark. I would imagine that the book I'm going to write later, one of my last books, that goes into Antichrist, is going to be quite illuminating in that respect. Okay, last question. Okay, from somebody else. This is from DC, and he says that here is a question perhaps for one of your wonderful satsangers. Thank you. I'm sure that you touched upon this before in another place, but I just haven't found it yet. The question has to do with infinity. God always has and always will be. This is what we know, yes. It seems that there has been a beginning which was event space, which almost destroyed itself in creating the origin. Is there a consciousness associated with event space? Or is there a consciousness as origin's origin? I realise that this question is extremely difficult even to word. And then as a follow-on, okay, let's do that bit first. Event space was simply an evolutionary direction that everything that is the origin, even before it was classified as the origin, was. And event space is as infinite as that which is the origin in its omniversal position is. Polyomniscient, polyomniversal, if you want to call it that. So when event space recognised that it in itself was limited to a function of sentience and a function of manipulation of the energies and the frequencies and the structure that it existed within, then it really realised that another level of evolution, another evolutionary direction of other energies was more in keeping with the ability to become polyomniscient. Then it sacrificed its own progression to sentience, so to speak, to allow that which is the origin to create. So there wasn't an origin, so to speak. The origin's origin was based upon a natural function of, if you want to call it this, Darwinian evolution. The coalescence of energies, and the desire of those energies to collate and collect together to each other. Like water molecules collect with water molecules, and oil molecules collect with oil molecules, but they are separate. Eventually, if you have enough water molecules, you will get a level of intelligence associated with that water molecules, and the same with oil molecules. Eventually, you'll get a level of intelligence associated with it, and then it grows to being highly intelligent, and then self-aware, and then conscious, and all these different things comes into it. But in terms of consciousness associated with event space, it is simply intelligent now, not specifically conscious. So it's sacrificed its level of progression to sentience to allow the other level of evolution that was happening to become the dominant level of evolution, and the origin to become the origin. Okay, so event space simply as intelligence. And I'm being told not really consciousness anymore. There's recognition of what it is as intelligence, but that's not quite consciousness. It's simply event space knows event space. It's not really understanding of what it is from a conscious perspective. It recognises event space. So that's all the sort of self-awareness it's got, really. Again, it could have been very sentient, but recognise that it in itself, as a function of the structure of that which is now the origin, was limited in its own right. So that's why it gave up that possibility of becoming the dominant sentience, and assisted that which is now the origin to become the origin. Okay, so the follow-on question here is, how did this information get disseminated to origin, then source, then you? Basically, I think it's by luck. By luck and questioning and asking the right things at the right time when I wrote the Origin Speaks. It's my own lineage being I don't like talking about my own lineage, but I tend to have the ability to log into things and understand certain levels of concepts that can be described in a human way. But even that in its own right is limiting. So, I look forward to being disincarnate and experiencing a higher level of connectivity and understanding. But basically, I expect that there was an event space that allowed me to be asking the right questions at the right time and get an answer that was capable of being translated into human language. And I would guess that that's specifically available to me right now, but will be available to others later as we rise with the frequencies. So I think it's simply a function of that, and a little bit of luck as well. The luck being I've managed to follow a life plan and not stray off it, because life plans are quite, you can go, the plan is to get from A to B. How you get there is up to you. You can get there faster or fast, or it's simply slow. And I think sometimes when we go slow, we sometimes miss the boat of what's happening and when we get to point B from point A. So the next part of it is, and then the question about the future, will it all return to the event space, or will there even be greater accomplishments that we become? And the questioner says, thank you so much, and no worries if there's no answer forthcoming or a place where you might have touched this before. Well, really, the greater accomplishments are that at some point, when all of the source entities, through our work, have managed to map out this particular area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness of the origin, then it goes into the next level of awareness and branches out into that, and all the structure associated with that. And some of this work is going to be discussed in the book. It's going to be called Beyond the Origin. So it's not actually beyond the origins, beyond the origins area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness, which is where Source Entity 12 is helping to start to create the milestones to assist the origin in starting to map it out itself in that future event space, the other event space. But in that event space, our true energetic selves, because the space that's available is a function. I can't even give it numbers. It's a function of magnitude significantly greater than the function of magnitude that grows as we move from one particular piece of structure to another piece of structure. So the magnitude is 12 to the power of 12 by going from a full dimension to a zone, and it's the 12 to the power of 12 from the zone to, and the previous 12 to the power of 12 go from a zone to a continuum, for instance. So it's going to be a huge magnitude of difference in terms of space, I'm going to call it that. So as a result of that, our true energetic selves are going to be given source entity status. So we can go and do the things that our source entities are doing now. The source entities will have another level of status. One that is much bigger than they've got now. So that's the greater accomplishments, is that eventually, when we've finished all of our evolutionary cycles, our true energetic selves become source entities. That's the level of achievement. And that'll be a wonderful thing to be part of eventually. And it'll be something that is going to be of no doubt very exciting as a true energetic self, becoming a source entity and having all the powers that source entities have now. Okay, so that's the last of the questions, and we've got through to an hour and 18 minutes, so it's quite a long time. So the last part of this particular satsanga is to go through the meditation, which is a meditation to energize the body. And what I'm going to do is just to create a way that shows a method of connecting ourselves in totality to the source, and that will energize our body. Okay. I've given different examples where we open the chakras, for instance, and that provides a level of energization of the body. But what this is going to do is this is going to link us up to source entity energy to energize the body. Okay. So let's close our eyes. And if you're not already in a straight backed chair, find a straight backed chair before you close your eyes, of course. Sit with your back straight and your feet flat on the ground. Your hands palm uppermost on the upper thighs in the location where the upper legs meet the lower body. And I want you to visualize that your human form, your body, is just floating in space. This space is an infinitely large bubble. But I want you to move your body, this visualization of your human form, in a recumbent posture, if you wish, lying down. Sometimes called a supine position for meditation. And I want you to visualize that it manages to move to an area where you can see the demarcation between the frequency-based environment that it's in to the next frequency-based environment, the next level upwards. So it's like being inside a balloon, where if you're inside the balloon, you can see the inside surface of the skin of the balloon. So just position yourself reasonably close to this surface. Now, from our perspective, this surface is the demarcation between the environment that we're in a multiversal environment, and the other space that's outside of this multiversal environment, that is pure source entity, structure and sentience. Now, the body can be energized in a number of different ways, some of them physical, some of them meditative, some of them using various different yoga-based exercises. But what we're going to do now is we're going to connect a number of known locations for energy junctures on the human form to the energies that are outside of this bubble, this balloon, this multiversal environment. We've ignored the different frequencies within the multiverse, we've just gone to the outer edge. And I want you to envisage that the points of connection are going to be the ankles, the knees, the hips, the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, the root or base chakra, the sacral chakras, solar chakras, heart chakras, throat chakras, spiritual or third eye chakras, and the crown chakra. And what we're going to do is connect a little string of energy to each of those points. And collect them together in your hands, so to speak. So connect a string of energy. If you want to imagine that you're plugging them into like a socket, and like an electric socket, you can do, or a jack plug, or simply just sticks there, you can do. But put one of these pieces of energetic string onto the left ankle, and then another one to the right ankle. So you've now got these two ankles connected to this string that is collected in a bundle in your hand. The other ends of the bundle are simply just hanging free at the moment. So you've got one end of the bundle you're going to connect to these different parts of the body, and the other end of the bundle is going to be connected to something else in a moment. Okay, so take another piece of energetic string and connect it to your left knee. In this visualization of yourself close to this inside edge of this demarcation line between the multiversal environment and pure source entity structure. And then another piece of energetic string and connect it to your right knee. And then get another piece of energetic string and connect it to your left hip. And another piece of energetic string and connect it to your right hip. And again another piece of energetic string and connect it to your left wrist. And another piece of energetic string connected to your right wrist. And another piece of energetic string connected to your left elbow. And another piece of energetic string connected to your right elbow. Another piece of energetic string connected to your left shoulder, and another piece of energetic string connected to your right shoulder. Now we need to use the chakras to connect to. So you get another piece of string, energetic string connected to your base or root chakra, and another piece of energetic string connected to the front aspect of your sacral chakra, another piece of energetic string connected to the rear aspect of your sacral chakra, and then another piece of energetic string connected to the front aspect of your solar chakra, and another piece to the rear aspect of your solar chakra, and another piece of energetic string connected to the front aspect of the solar chakra, another one to the rear aspect of the sacral chakra, another one to the front aspect of your heart chakra, another one to the rear aspect of your heart chakra, another one to the front aspect of your throat chakra, and another one to the rear aspect of your throat chakra. And the last three, Another piece of energetic string will be connected to the front aspect of your spiritual third eye chakra, and another piece of energetic string to the rear aspect of your spiritual third eye chakra. And the final piece of energetic string connected to your crown chakra. Just think of it just sticking there or connecting there. You've now got connections to all of the major areas that can be used to energize the body. The rest of the bundle, the other ends, I want you to visualize these other ends being part of a great big multi-point connector. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. At least 24 connections in there. Connections in a connector. Okay, think of it like one of the connectors that you have to connect a peripheral to your computer, such as a projector or a printer. Okay. Now I want you to take this connector and look along the inside edge of this, the inside edge of this balloon, this demarcation line between the universal environment that we're in, the multiversal environment that we're in, and the energies that are source. And ask source to provide the opposite connector, the male or the female side of this connector. And in front of you you'll see the opposite connector being created on the inside surface of this bubble. So put the two connectors together and you're now connected to the energies of the source outside of this environment, but creating a direct connection between you and all those different points and the source. Now to make this work properly, just visualize a switch, very simple switch right next to this connector. And turn the switch on. And you can leave that switch on. And as you turn the switch on, this switch turns on energy that comes down through that connector, down through these pieces of energetic string, into all of the different chakras and all of the other body points, the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, the hips, the knees and the ankles. Energizing the spiritual, physical and the gross physical aspects of your human incarnate vehicle. Feel the difference. Some of you might feel heat. Some of you might feel your body tingling. Some of you might be feeling pressure on the area of your third eye. Some of you might be feeling or hearing tinnitus in the right ear or in both ears. Just feel the energy coming into you, recognizing that sometimes people don't get any physical feedback. That's generally because they're already operating on a high frequency anyway, and we don't get the offset between the base resonant frequency of the human form and the energies that are coming into them. Just bask in this energy that's coming into you. Feel your body becoming recharged, re-energized, lighter, younger, faster, more capable, quicker of thinking. You can leave this switch connected if you wish. Turned on, I should say. You can leave the connector connected, and you can turn off this link with source to energize your body at any time. You can leave it turned on, or you can turn it on when you feel the need to. It's there for you all of the time now. If you feel tired or fatigued, just visualize these connections to you still being connected to this inside edge of the demarcation line between this multiversal environment and the source entity structure and energies and sentience. And just flick the switch and know that you're being energized and recharged. So whichever you want to do, leave it turned on or turn it off and reap the benefits later. You can slowly come back into the room that you're in, listening to this satsanga. Slowly open your eyes. And come back into the room, and if you can, take a drink of water or some other benign liquid like tea. And that's the end of this particular satsanga. Thank you very much for all those who've participated or listened into it in the various different event spaces surrounding it and them. The next satsanga will be on the 26th of May, so that's what it will be then. And I forgot to tell you, just to let you know, those who are interested, that I've finished the first draft of my 7th book, The Curators, which is around it's just a little bit over 136,000 words, which equates to something like about 430-ish pages of printed text. And I'm just going to work on doing the glossary after I finish this work. It'll be more of a lexicon, actually, of all of the different glossaries and the words, the meanings behind some of the words and the nomenclature from previous books, and also the additional stuff from this particular book as well. And I'm hoping to take it as a finished article, if not posted before, but certainly take it with me to the Transformation Conference in the first weekend of August. So I'll present it to my publishers then, and hopefully they'll smile upon it benevolently, and you might see it certainly. If it's published by them, it'll be published by around about March next year, I would guess, or certainly April next year. Okay, a little bit of news for you there. Thank you very much again for listening, and thank you to Kevin for broadcasting it on his YouTube channel. And send you all God's love, Source's love, and don't forget to be of service, be good to others, and make sure that your thoughts, behaviours and actions are maintained in the purest sense. Namaste to everybody, and look forward to working with you and broadcasting the next satsanga on the 26th of May 2018. Goodbye to you all, and God's love to you all.